do we even start this project? Well, all that we want to start with for now is we want to draw a single A on the page. Don't need to worry about any movement or any kind of animation for now. All we just want to draw is an A. So how do we do this? Well, what we're going to be using is P5 again, rather than using HTML and CSS. And the reason for that is we want to kind of split our text up and animate it as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my project. So I'm going to create a brand new project called 9A's, 888, 888, 888, and press enter. Now by default, we have some default setup, of course. We have our index.html and 2 style sheets. I don't really need anything in my index.html because we're going to draw things in P5. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of all of my content. So now if I look at the page, I'll see just a blank white page. Let's start to style this up a little bit. So I don't need any H1 tags now. I can get rid of this. The reason for that is there's no H1 tags. So let's make our code nice and clean. We also don't need any width or margin because we're going to just put this right in the middle of the page. Now, of course, what we want to do is make the background color red. So how do I know which red color that I need to go? Well, I've got my downloads folder again, my project 4. Just going to open this up. And what I have in here is some content.txt. I'm just going to open this up in a text editor. I'm going to use IA Writer, but you can use whatever text file you want. I'm just going to pick this red color. I've got some links up here as well. So I'm just going to make this background color red. And also, I'm going to make my text yellow, just so I've got these two ready to go in my code later on. So what I should see now is on my page, just a big red page. How do we set up P5 though? Well, what I need to do is install my P5 library and also the font that I'm going to use. So in my assets folder, I've got 2 things in here, my p5.min.js. The .min just means it's a minimized file, so it loads really, really quick. And also I've got my space grotesque medium as well. I'm just going to open these up and just basically add them to my project. So I've got my font and my P5 library added to my project, but they're not loaded into my index.html at the moment. So how do I add this in? Well, the first thing I need to do is go to my index.html and load this script in. So the first thing on here, I'm just going to add a new script tag. Which scripts do we want to pull in though? Well, similar to like an image, we want to pull in its source. So we're going to add a space after the T with src. This is going to be equal to, in quotes, which of these scripts? Well, we've only got one in here at the moment, which is, unsurprisingly, p5.min.js. So this is installing our P5 library so that we can draw things on the page. But how do we know what to draw? Well, I need to write in my own script what it should be. So I'm going to make my own script in here. So I'm going to add a new script called script.js. We can call it whatever we want, as long as it makes sense to us. Script.js. So there it is. This is where our code is going to go. But again, we've added a file, but it's not in my index.html. I won't be able to draw on my index page until it's installed in the same way. So my index.html, what I want to do I want to do this above this or below this? Well, I need P5 to load before I actually do my own code. So this will always go below. This has a certain order. So here I want my load, and then I want my own code in here. So script, and I'm going to pull this in with source equals this one, unsurprisingly, script.js. So again, just watch out for any typos here. Watch out for source src rather than scr, which is something we see quite a lot. So here, what we've got is P5 being loaded. Then we're going to run some code. But what code? Well, at the moment in our script.js, currently completely empty. So again, how does P5 work? How do we get started? It's always the same way. If we scroll down, we've installed things, and then we need a setup and a draw function. So in my code, what I'm going to do is just write 2 of these functions. They always look the same if we use P5. First thing it's going to write is function called setup. And then what we need is a round brackets and some curly brackets. Now the curly brackets is all the code that we're going to do in setup. It means do this. So just to make this easier to read and write inside of, I'm going to open them up. We also need a draw function as well. So we've got something that sets up once and then we draw something. So in here, we're going to do a function called draw. We need round brackets, curly brackets. And again, Just to make it easier to write inside of, I'm just going to open these up too. Now, what it says in this Getting Started guide is we can add an ellipse on draw, and it kind of shows it there. So we don't want to draw an ellipse. We obviously want to draw some text. So how do we do that? Well, if I scroll back up the page, what we should see is reference, and it's all the things that P5 can do. Now in here, there's a lot of things, and obviously we want to talk about typography. I'm going to click typography, and here is all the type things we can do. I want to add some text to the page. So if I click text, there's a few things that we can do. Here's an example of what it should do. But if we scroll down, it gives us a bit more of a description. It has a text with the string, basically the characters that we want to put in there, and then the X and Y coordinate. X is across, Y is down. So let's just do this on setup for now. We just want to draw it once. So in setup, I'm going to go back up here and add some text using round brackets. 3 things that it expects: minimum, string, X and Y coordinates. So the string, of course, in quotes is A. A is what we draw into text. Then we need a comma. Where is this going to live on setup? Well, for now, I'm just going to put it at 100, 100. Now, if we look at the page right now, hopefully we should see some text. But if we look, we don't. Where is this A that's been drawn? Well, the issue that we have is our canvas by default is 100 by 100. We need to make it a little bit bigger. So I need to go back to P5 and see how we create a canvas. And again, we've got this rendering section here. What I want to do is click Create Canvas, and this gives us some kind of setup of a width and a height. Now, what is the width and height of my final canvas that looks like this? 600 by 600. So before I draw any text, I need to tell the whole of this canvas that we're drawing inside of, we want to do 600 by 600. So create canvas, and we use round brackets to tell it to do something. What do we want to do? Well, we need to pass in 600, 600. And what we should see now is something that looks like this A. Now this A is 100 and 100 from the top left corner, because the canvas at the moment isn't in the middle of the page. It's just in this top corner, and 600 by 600. How do we move it into the middle of the page? Well, this is some style. Like, we've drawn things within the canvas, but now we need to move it into the middle of the page. And if I right click and press inspect, we'll see this kind of canvas appear. There it is in the top corner. We want to move this canvas right in this middle of the page instead. So to do that, I'm going to add a tiny bit of CSS. So I'm going to go back to my style.css, and underneath my body, what I'm going to do is this canvas. Again, it's sad at the moment because technically there's nothing in my index.html called canvas, but we're adding this using JavaScript instead. In here, what we're going to do is position fixed. We're going to put it in the top by 50% and the left, if I spelled left correctly, by 50% as well. But the issue that we have here is, again, this top left corner is in the middle of the page. So this is 100 and 100 from the middle of the page. We want to shift this into the middle. So move this canvas, which is currently down here, over and up. So we're going to shift it up in a different way. We're going to use a transform with translate, minus 50%, minus 50%. And what this will do is it will just move it across by 50% of its width, 50% of its height. So this now is in the middle of the page. So this is kind of, my canvas is in the middle of the page. It's kind of like framed with this red area. But of course, what we want to do is start to style out this text. At the moment, we've just got this A tag. It's Arial because this is the default. And we've just drawn a small bit of content.